Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Software Plaza podcast. I'm Twain Taylor, and I have with me Taylor Dolezal. Uh, we share something common in our names, and I love having Taylor over. He's just someone he's really a champion of open source. Done a lot of work, with the CNCF that he's worked with for many years, and he's been on the show quite a few times, and just talked a lot about encouraging just listeners to go and contribute, get involved with open source projects, and I really love that about him. Uh, and This has been an eventful year for him because he's made quite a shift in his career, and he's moved on from his role as head of ecosystem at CNCF earlier this year, and he's right now at Dosu. That's Dosu.dev. And so I thought it'll be a good time to get him on and for him to be able to share about what's exciting him today, what he's working on, and just all of the changes that this year has brought into his life. So, Taylor, thanks for joining us. It's great to have you here again.
Thank you so much for having me, Twain. Yeah, that first time that I noticed your last name and my first name were the same, like you said, that's that was enough to get me compelled. And then you want to talk about open source? Oh my gosh, absolutely. I'm always ready.
Yeah, yeah, it's not often that happens. Uh, yeah, it's been an eventful year, like I said, for you. When you announced your, having a new chapter on LinkedIn, I remember it was like, I don't know, hundreds of likes and tens of comments. It was just, it was big news on that day because you have so many connections in the space, and everyone was wondering what's going to happen, what's going to be your next chapter. And yeah, so that's a few months away now. You got to recently visit KubeCon, and I was wondering what was it like visiting KubeCon this time, not as an organizer, not representing the CNCF, but being part of one of the attendee organizations. Was anything different at all?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. Go being part of KubeCon, I remember I think my first KubeCon that I got to see in person was in San Diego in 2019. And so I loved that was such a unique experience getting to see people for the first time that I had only seen on GitHub. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're a real person, right? Getting to have those hallway conversations. I remember feeling so bad about missing some of the talks that I wanted to see because up until that time, when I would go to conferences, that was the key piece that you wanted to focus on, right? Was did you see that talk? But I love that the CNCF puts those up on YouTube. I can catch them later. And in the event that I miss a talk, but always great to see them in person, of course, and ask questions after the fact. But that was a very unique experience. My first time going to KubeCon and getting a sense for how does this conference work? And like you said, getting to work for various companies, like when I was at HashiCorp as a vendor, talking at the booth, very different experience. And then joining the CNCF, giving a keynote. What is that? What is that like? And then actually throwing the conference and working with all of the Linux Foundation and CNCF staff, very different. And then now getting a sense for understanding, what's behind the curtain and what are all the gears, kind of what having knowledge of what actually goes on behind the scenes at the conference, and then now getting to attend as someone that is taking part as far as the conference itself, knowing where all those gears are, what strings are being pulled, what's happening which day. Not gonna lie, it was really nice to have a little bit more like breathing room and being
Mm,
able to plan out my day rather than like just back-to-back events. The CNCF
right.
staff does so much during a
Yeah.
KubeCon event that it was nice to have a little bit more time back in my day, but and then the chance to get to visit with people and talk to maintainers, and I really liked it this time. It was nice.
Mhm. Amazing. Yeah, I'm sure you must have been having a lot of moments where, okay, I know who's behind that. I know.
That
Or
I've got
just,
some good icebreaker questions. Yeah, it's just like, yeah, what did you really think? Tell me. Like, let's sit down. Let's talk about this.
yeah. Yeah, that's really fascinating. So Dosu. Uh, yeah, I wanted to just ask about, how did that happen? What drew you to Dosu? Yeah, you're there right now. Tell us about it. How did you find out about Dosu and what got you there?
There were a few things with Dosu. First off, I really liked I think that Chris Anichek from the CNCF, the CTO, made that intro as far as introducing me to Devin Stein, the CEO and founder of Dosu. So love Chris because he's great with connecting people and seemingly knows everyone. So
Mhm,
I need to figure out his secret on that front someday. He hasn't told me, but I need to ask him on
mhm,
that front. But I loved my first initial meetings with Devin and just getting to hear what his thoughts were about the company, where
mhm,
he wanted to bring it. There are a
mhm.
lot of companies that I've spoken with while I was at the CNCF,
Yeah.
before and after, where they focus on developer tooling or specific features or a vision, a mission. And at Dosu, it was documentation, really knowledge as far as open source and enterprise companies are concerned. So,
Mhm,
one of the ways that knowledge is quantified is documentation or being able to ask and have questions answered. So, I liked how Devin was leading with the open source focus and this deep understanding. Devin works on some open source projects and maintaining them himself. So, he knows what's good, what's not so good, and what can be improved within that space. So that's what really drew me to Dosu and Devin's vision of what do we actually want to work on? How do we want to help people on that front? So those were some of the draws for me. And then
mhm,
once I got the chance to go and visit with the team and talk with them, in person, it was very clear to me that, okay, I could see myself at Dosu, and then was very happy to join as head of open source on that front because it's more opportunities like this, getting to talk to you, the community, maintainers, and then I love the kind of job where you can go and chat with people and then hear a feature request and you're like, I love that. Let's talk about it. And then see that come to fruition days or weeks later with the product.
mhm. Wow, awesome. Yeah, that's quite a story, and really good that you found something that's really so close to your heart. Um, so documentation, I like it's very specific. It's clear. This so does.
Markdown, that's it. No.
Because you got products trying to do different things, fit into like every possible market they can, and so I like that, like focused on one thing. Uh, but we were just preparing for the podcast earlier, and I found quite interesting that you mentioned that Dosu is relevant to both open source projects as well as end user commercial projects. Companies that actually running software and they need documentation, and it's relevant to both use cases. And I want to touch on both. But let's just start with talking about kind of the pain points around documentation and uh, a little bit, if you could kind of trace to where we are at today versus where we've
Mhm.
come from, because I know there's been, developments even in the space of just how documentation is created over the years, uh, different approaches, and so trace a bit of where we are at today, some of the how we got here, and some of the challenges around documentation.
Another wonderful question. I remember those days where I was getting started in my career and I don't have any around me right now, but like a big thick manual that just had everything that you could possibly want to know. I started my I started my career, well, I guess it was my career on the TI-83 plus calculator and programming in BASIC. And I loved having that. I was running around school. I had this big, thick manual that I would read. And any questions I had, again, I could find most of them in there. Or
Mhm.
I had enough to get started. And
Right.
so I remember over time you saw those manuals starting to shrink, things
Hmm.
getting put out on the web, and just that whole space really changed over the past like 20, 30 years.
Hmm.
And I, to be candid, I didn't like that so much. I liked having something that was tangible because I knew that, no matter, I had enough battery to be able to read the
Hmm.
manual and to find what I needed. And
Okay.
then we saw that change with Google coming up, right? You didn't need to go to the library. You didn't need a big, thick documentation manual at your side. You could
Hmm.
actually go and search for the right web pages and things. I got used to that. I got a
Hmm.
Kindle. I started writing down notes in notebooks, and then I just reconfigured how I dealt with my set of knowledge. And then
Okay.
fast forward to today where we have AI now. And rather than just getting you a specific web page that you might want to
Hmm.
check out, you can actually get down to the line or get, paste in a code snippet and get a little bit more insight or information as to what does this do? How do I do X, Y, Z? And so as we think about knowledge today, we just had our Dosu team offsite last week. We were talking about something that was I still am trying to unravel in my mind because I love this focus so much is what is knowledge? And what we were talking about was documentation even. Are docs going to and markdown files, web pages, is that going to be the thing that persists over time? Or is that going to take another change and kind of reshape itself?
Right.
Do documents have facts in them? That's kind of what we were exploring was this concept of facts. And how do we
Right.
quantify that? What does that look like? Can you have a document that has no facts in at all? Those are the kinds of things that we talked about, and we discussed more of this tailored type of situation where, which you and I like, I'm sure, uh, people being able to ask questions and get the right answer at the right time. And, docs might look different for everyone in the future, is kind of what we were playing with the idea of. Based on the
Hmm.
context and my perception of the world,
Hmm.
it's one size fits all doesn't really feel right with documentation, but that's one of the things that we're going to be exploring over this next year is how can we explore more of that idea and make something that is tangible and quantifiable to people in a meaningful way. Um,
Hmm.
Again, do we generate an artifact in a document? Is that going to be the thing that's helpful? Or are we locked forever in this chat box future where we're going to be asking questions back and forth and have tools like Dosu to be able to remember where we last left off and then what you might want to jump into? So, no, it's a little bit longer explanation and expansion, but as you can see, very passionate about what is knowledge, what does documentation look like in the future?
Yeah, quite a profound response, I'd say, and really got us thinking about, yeah, like the things you asked about what is knowledge, what are facts, how will they be presented, how will they be consumed? I think very basic questions about just, how information is going to be shared, consumed, and really interesting stuff there. Yeah, so you kind of traced like, the origins of documentation and even just kind of a glimpse of, more a question of what's coming for documentation. And it was interesting that you said you kind of miss the days when you had something concrete that you could look at and refer. And in a way, we kind of keep going back and forth. We go back to the past, we come to the future, and it seems like that may kind of be happening even with documentation, to where, um, yeah, maybe some people would prefer to have something very specific and concrete as documentation. Really interesting questions that you brought up there. What are some of the other trends around documentation in terms of it, being updated, keeping with, the faster, release velocities that we see, and even with just changing team structures. And we're seeing even, a lot of code being written, generated by AI tools. A lot is happening, a lot of change, and the rate of change keeps getting faster. And so documentation as well is reacting to all of that. What are your thoughts around some of those things about just the way things are moving faster and different with AI generated code? How is all that affecting documentation?
A lot of things flashed through my mind as you were asking that question, and let me pick where to start. I
Mhm.
think as it pertains to documentation now, and with this age of AI and enrichment, we have a huge opportunity to be able to tap into a lot more perspectives and data sources now, I think. And so rather than just you and your write up on a piece of paper about a talk you heard, or you go through the code base and then it's your take on what do we create a tutorial? Do we create an FAQ section? A lot of those decisions don't need to be made in that way anymore, right? Because we have living documents now. We have Confluence and Notion and
Hmm.
Markdown on GitHub. We have a lot of options about how do we want to write this thing in the first place. And
Hmm.
then even in the act of documenting and creating and quantifying what we observe or what we want to share with people, there's a lot there that I think is still left quite open. So in terms
Okay.
of tone or focus, and I like that we have so many more data sources now, but we run into the problem of now we have a lot of data. What's important? And that kind of why I liked that one facts thing that we talked about during the offsite is what's important to someone, and then likely that changes over time, right? Like Kubernetes is, I think, at 1.36, or that's what's getting worked on right now. Um, what is the latest version of Kubernetes? Temporally, that fact changes over time. Or what methods do I call? Or what's the best tool for X, Y, Z?
Yeah.
I think documentation used to be something that was static and
Yeah.
fairly unchanging in those examples of, the manual I would carry around. Code didn't
Hmm.
flow as quickly, and now it
Right.
does. So, what's relevant to me? What news? What's the delta? What are the changes that have happened? I think we get an incredible view of a new thing to consider as it pertains to documentation and knowledge itself is what changes over time.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think that's the thing that we're going to see changing quite a bit is did the tone change? Did a new maintainer step in? Did a new person step in and kind of take over what the documents look like? Was it a group of people? And then taking a look at those trends over time is something that's what I have my eye on. I haven't seen too many people talk about this, but I'm looking for more talks and books and other things that are going to help me rethink about how I think and go and document in the future because having a living document that's going to be something that people enjoy, not just reading, but feel the ability to go and edit and shape and change or say, hey, this isn't clear, or I would like a new section based on this. Those are some of the things I'm thinking of on that front and just documentation, some trends that we're seeing. Within open source, it seems to be that a lot of those communities in mature projects have really good docs or a great
Yeah.
start to be able to get to jump in and to help out to understand the space.
Mm.
Whereas enterprises and startups and others, they have their docs might not be the best, but they have something started, but it's just
Yeah.
a very sprawling experience. So
Mm.
there's a lot everywhere. And that's very different than an open source project where it might have a very deep focus in one document or a few documents.
Mm. Mm.
And you might not know where to go to find the thing. So that's what I think AI will be able to help out with, both vector and graph search and all these other ways to go
Mm.
and get started. But I think that we're in an interesting time where we have a lot of information. It's going to be difficult to sort through that, just even the news and events and other things that go on, but
Mm.
also an incredible time to enrich the ways in which we capture knowledge and write documents with these added things. Was it sunny? Was it rainy? Like what is going to be interesting to read about in the future? And just kind of thinking about it more like almost a history type thing. I think that the more metadata we can capture, the better we're going to be thinking about the future and just how we write docs, how we deal with knowledge.
Yeah, I gotta say, really fascinating space you're in right now. Maybe the way that you're communicating it makes me really intrigued in the things you guys are doing.
Write it
Uh,
down. Yeah.
Dynamic documentation that gets updated, like a living document, really fascinating stuff. And those talk to like how it's created and maintained. I'm also curious to know about even how it's consumed, like you kind of touched on in your earlier response. Where are we at in terms of the times right now, in terms of how docs are consumed? Do you think we're already there where, we're finding ways to already customize docs based on who is consuming it? Or do you think that's still some time away from now?
I feel like this is a big problem that we face, especially with code, especially on GitHub and other like code repos that just, I understand people read docs and books and many other things in different ways, but that's where my head's at is like GitHub and dealing with code there. One of the things that I've always wanted to see is almost like this Google Analytics or like a web view level of context where you can see, are people scrolling down the page? Are they focused on this paragraph? Not in a creepy way to track people with analytics, but a way to quantify, is this helpful? Is this useful? Because a lot of times, just as people, typically when we get incensed or upset, then is when we feel, like, oh, I missed my flight. That's when you take action because you're kind of upset and you want something to be done about it. But when you're having a good time, it's rare that you'll see people go like thumbs up, like, wow, this is really helpful. I feel like it has to be very profound for people to take that leap and say, yes, thank you for that. So, given those constraints, being able to get more metadata about what docs people are reading, how often they reference it, whether it's page views or scrolls, I think that that's something that we miss, especially, with offline books and documentation. That's never quantified. I know that. I might put that in Goodreads or somewhere else, but it's of little use or value to the people that wrote or crafted something. So I think that I'd love to see a little bit more telemetry on that front. And that's what one of the things that I'll talk with the team at Dosu about is, do we get page views? Can we see what facts are being cited or pulled into the documents that get created with the help of the AI so that we can see what is useful and kind of get this understanding of a graph of knowledge and see like, okay, this is referenced a lot within this organization or this open source project. Maybe it makes sense to enrich that or check to see if it's out of date more often than docs that might only get looked at a few times a month or a year. And also thinking about how do we leverage AI to help out with the maintainer journey or the skills that we might not necessarily need to make a core competency, right? Like I take out my garbage and I wash my dishes. Are those my favorite things to do? Absolutely not. But if I could automate them, oh my gosh, I'd have a little bit more time in my day to be able to focus on some of the things I'm passionate about, like docs and knowledge and these other things, or some new area of study that I want to jump into. So,
Mhm.
as being mindful about that so that we don't automate away too much, I think is something that's going to be helpful for us to think about and be careful as we consider. But like you said, if I can get a sense for in an open source project, what types of questions people are asking, or what's the topic, what's the general theme of what is the zeitgeist of conversation right now? What do people care about? What are they talking about? Can I quantify that? And then can I bring that back to my team to say, hey, we people are asking about a demo, or people are asking about this feature or this kind of outcome within their project, and they need knowledge to do that, or we don't make this clear enough. Let's use that information to help make this a little bit better and more accessible and meet people where they're at so that people can jump in and help maintain docs because making docs like a multiplayer game in the future, I think will also be something that is helpful rather than just life is what I see on the page. No, reach in. You can manipulate this. You can edit this. You can give feedback. I'd love to see more of that.
Interesting. Yes, you've been like involved in working with like open source projects for years now, and you've been really focused on documentation this past year. What's something about open source documentation that you found out after coming to Dosu that you probably didn't know before? You didn't think much about it before. That after coming, you realized, okay, it was an aha moment. Okay, I didn't know this was a big challenge, or I didn't know it worked this way, but I didn't know this is the solution. What were some of the big learnings for you this past year?
The big learning for me this year was documentation just lives in so many places, and it kind of like with Kubernetes. I like that Kubernetes gave us this common language to be able to quantify what's a deployment, what's a service, what's a config map, what's a secret. And I don't feel like we've gotten to that place with documentation just yet. We don't have these primitives that we really lean into, other than pen and paper, markdown, files, folders. we have some of the shape of things there, but I am truly, Twain, blown away by the amount of places in which documentation lives, or and the expectation of things to be constantly updated, and uh, I think that's fair. Being able, but when someone sees last updated 2002, they might go, that might still be helpful. It doesn't necessarily mean that the documentation is stale or old. It might just mean that it's good enough for what we need to do. And so being able to see in data and explore some of those biases or just how people interact with documentation, with knowledge. Those have been some of
Mm,
the aha moments for me, but also the just the it documentation and the sprawl of knowledge is done differently just about everywhere. I'm not seeing this like most teams have this kind of information flow or this interaction with their knowledge base. It is so varied and so different, and that's been one of the biggest, mind explosion things for me to observe. I had that feeling, but now that I was able to actually see it and have that quantified, that's what did it for me. Was like,
mhm,
nope, I can. It's not just a gut feeling anymore. It's something that I can actually observe.
mhm. Wow, amazing. I kind of want to segue a bit and talking about just Dosu and what it's about. But yeah, just want to ask as well about you know just before you get into exactly the elevator pitch of Dosu, how would you sketch the solution to this challenge of knowledge and data living everywhere? And that's a huge challenge today. How do we, organize all of that, make it, easy to consume, make it helpful? Sketch the solution for us in broad terms, and then we'll get to talking about like Dosu's approach.
Absolutely. Dosu is a good way to think about it is like CI/CD for knowledge or your documentation. So Dosu plugs into a myriad of integrations. I think some of the more popular ones that people use on that front are for data ingest into Dosu is our GitHub, web sources, and then
Okay.
Slack. So you can
Okay.
capture conversation, you can capture docs or other types of information on the website. And then GitHub is, I'd say, one of the, because we focus on code and those ecosystems mostly, that's where you're going to get the
Mhm.
most rich information. So
Okay.
Dosu's
All
set
right.
up to capture those events so that you don't have
Mhm.
to go through every single commit and then write that down or make sure that's in a database. Dosu can handle that for you. And then
Mhm.
you can start to quantify those types of findings based on, like, you can ask Dosu for a change log between start date, end date. You can ask questions about, okay, I'm running on Mac OS. How do I configure this project for my machine or architecture or whatever your constraints might be? And then Dosu will go research, take a look at the documentation, the events, all of these sources of information that it has. And then you can
Mhm.
use AI to get a response on that front. And because AI is good at writing that first draft or helping to give a good starting place, it's not deterministic the way in which it's set up right now. And I don't think that knowledge is, right? Like, I can't just tell you, here's the secret to life, and it's applicable to you because people are stochastic. People have different perceptions and understandings. So Dosu is a tool that meets people where they're at. And even if we've gotten the right information and created a document and you can constantly keep docs updated with Dosu and, whether it's regenerating the document or asking for a new report or page or whatever your question might be, there's this ability to ask Dosu questions based on a specific organization, like the CNCF, for example, and get things that are incredibly specific to what you're looking for so that it's not that LLM experience where you go, text box chat with an LLM and you're like, I need a toothbrush. And they just deliver you Walmart or a giant store, right? You're like, I didn't need all that. I just needed this section or I just needed that toothbrush. That's what I see
Mhm.
Dosu being more applicable for is getting people something that's focused. And then we
Mhm.
focus on facts. And while Dosu, it's not 100%, nothing is, does an incredible job at getting rid of what's confabulated or hallucinated and providing you like, here are citations for what you asked so that it's
Mhm.
not like No, you said I asked you about Taylor, not Twain Taylor. Come on, I want to know more about
Yeah.
myself. Those kinds of interactions and cases.
Yeah.
So that's ultimately what Dosu will help out with.
Okay. And I was wondering, so was Dosu started after like the AI boom when ChatGPT came on the scene big time, end of 23, or was it before that? Or in other words, I'm asking if Dosu is AI native from the start, or did it start before AI and then AI got added on? And I'm also just wondering, how, or maybe you could just answer that first, and then I'll just ask a follow-up question.
Yeah, I believe Dosu was I should know this. My Dosu was I think founded by Devin. I think it was at the end of 2022. And so it was right around this time. And I remember Devin had a great talk at KubeCon where he goes into a closed source tool for open source. Like, tell me more, and he'll dive into, he tells a great story about what the focus was and what he was weighing on his mind as far as what the direction of Dosu was going to go. And
Mm-hmm.
we'll serve open source communities right now. We might have some open source projects that come out over the coming months. We've had some good discussions about that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's that's been a very interesting thing as far as how do we leverage LLMs and AI within this space and make it useful so that you know do we focus on code generation? We can provide examples and things in the questions that you ask and what we return to you, but that's not the core focus, right? We're not like a PR bot. We're solely focused on documentation and knowledge on that front, but still trying to make sense of, like we have an MCP feature that we're releasing, I think next week, soon, if you'll hold me to it. And bidirectional markdown sync, there's a lot of things like that that we were trying to think about. What does the interaction of those LLMs actually help out with? Or how do we leverage AI in this space in a meaningful way rather than just like AI everything?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of different angles that different products and solutions are coming at similar problems with. I mean, I think there's like a really fast growing market for like coding assistants, developer assistants. And yeah, so I see that happening. And then there's of course you can probably point something like ChatGPT or Claude to like a bunch of documentation pages or like copy them or export them in PDFs and put them in and ask it questions around that. And or even the AI browsers like Comet that are sitting right there next to and telling you what exactly that page is about. It's just a lot happening in the space on different fronts. And so, yeah, I'm curious to see just, the approach Dosu takes and just how it's different from all of these other approaches that people are getting exposed to really quickly today, and everyone is exploring them, furiously. So really curious to see just Dosu's approach. Maybe if you could give us a walkthrough or a tour or a demo of what it's like to use Dosu, I'd really love to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I have a new machine and I believe I've been able to share my screen without the fun security warning. Okay, cool. So
Yep.
yeah, happy to jump right into it. So this is Dosu. I've pulled up the CNCF org, and where should I start? Um, so Dosu is great. We've talked a lot about knowledge and documents. So these are the kinds of documents that you can create within Dosu. So just ahead of KubeCon, Cloud Native Con in Atlanta here just a couple weeks back, I was working with some of the CNCF staff like George Castro and others to quantify some things like security contributions. How do I become a CNCF ambassador? And you can go and write these documents from scratch. Dosa will help provide you a space in which to do that. But if I
Mm-hmm.
click new and I click generate document, I can actually decide what data sources that I want to use, whether what web source, GitHub, etc. And then
Mm-hmm.
write me a CNCF FAQ and then give it some instructions and then kick this off. It'll take longer. With AI, I think that's something that we're starting to see people get a little bit more comfortable with, but not too comfortable with the wait times and the research type tasks. So when it
Right.
comes to developer experience and just like how do we be mindful of people as they go through this process?
Mhm.
Trying to figure out that has been a big conversation that we've been having internally at Dosu, and I've heard from other teams too. Like, how do we decrease latency? How do we source people with
Mhm.
the right things? But when it comes to writing docs, what I've found is that a lot of people are like, if you're going to write my docs for me, or at least give me a good starting space, take all the time you need, within reason. So this is one way to use Dosu. And then we fleshed out quite a few for this ask.cncf. Some people even caught the little Easter egg that Fippy wrote some of these docs. So if you check it out,
Mhm.
if you're checking this out, yeah, give Fippy a thumbs up. I'm sure that she'll like that. So these are some of the ways in which you can quantify information and data, and I think just about all these were generated through Dosu. I think George might have written this one from scratch, the Ask CNCF start here, but all of
Mhm.
these other docs were written with Dosu, and sessions at KubeCon, etc. This is something
Mhm.
that has been helpful. And then when it comes to being able to ask Dosu questions,
Mhm.
you can see, like I can say, what is Ask CNCF? And then Jusu will kick that off and then start taking a look at its data sources. And fairly simple question. So this one should answer a little bit more quickly. But this is one of the things that we're trying to think about is latency. How do we source the right thing at the right time? And do we need to kick off a full research task? Or is this something that we might have a document for? So Dosu will go here. It'll think, I'll let that run in the background. And I
Mhm.
can describe some of the other things on that front. Like you can copy a link, share with your friends, and kind of work on something together or see how they shaped their work. You can select
Mhm.
different data sources here, and you could see which ones are available to you. And then we
Mhm.
get this response from Dosu. We can say, like, is this good? Is this bad? Provide some context or clarity to make this a little bit better.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then some jumping off points as far as these docs. So like I can click this, and then I'll open that doc that we just saw before. So that's Dosu. That's kind of a quick run through walkthrough. In the
Mhm.
settings, you can take a look at data sources. That's kind of like ingest. So I
Mhm.
can go and add GitHub, Slack, web sources, Confluence, Notion, and several others on that front. And then you
Mhm.
can define what these data sources are as well. So, like, this is the definitive resource for X, Y, Z. And then output are channels. So, I don't think that any are set up right here, but typically people add GitHub or Slack, and then
Yeah.
that works as a bot and adds Dosu to a space so you can in real time ask questions of Dosu about when did we change, when did we shift from Redis to Valkey, or how did we set up our queuing system, or whatever your question might be, whether
Mhm.
directly through a direct message or on a team channel, depending on how you set that up. And then finally, this is a public space too. So you can see public here. People can go to Ask CNCFIO and ask whatever question that they might have about the foundation or related projects or what's on the landscape. So that's kind of a whirlwind tour. Happy to focus on anything or answer questions that you have, but
Yeah.
very easy to get started. Generous open source tier as far as working with this. And then
Mhm.
yeah, hopefully helpful to you in your workflow as you navigate just all of these data sources and other things. Some of the best conversations I have are typically with coffee in the morning, chatting with Dosu and trying to figure out what the team worked on the day before.
A couple of questions I have to follow up. One is it possible to actually publish from here to, let's say, GitHub or wherever your docs lives, uh, to kind of keep that as a public version, and this could be maybe an internal version. Anything on that front?
That's one of the things I'm most excited about. We don't have that today, but we're going to soon have that. It's still working on the name, but I think the way that we're thinking about it right now is this bidirectional markdown sync. So within GitHub, being able to add that as a data source and then see those docs published on the side here. And then,
Mm-hmm.
then you could jump in, edit here, and then see that change reflected back within your GitHub
Mm-hmm.
repository. And
Okay.
kind of using Dosu as more of the portal to pass all of these things through so that you can
Mhm.
constantly have updated docs. But coming soon, probably definitely before the end of the year is what we're planning on right now, to be able to have that external publishing type of interaction. But right
Mhm.
now, you could see these docs, they're public. Like you could use Dosu to go take a look at docs and share with the world. But we've had that question quite a bit, Twain, as far
Mm.
as like, I love this, but I have, but my docs live over here. Can you do this
Yeah,
export, or like, can data flow this way? So
yeah.
that's 100% valid. That's one of the things that we're
All right,
working on.
all right. Neat. And another follow-up question I have is about just hallucinations and just the quality of the output. I think because that would really matter in the case of this kind of solution, which is talking about knowledge, which means the quality of the knowledge is really like all that matters. And if not, you could use any other AI tool to just get you some kind of knowledge that's approximately correct. What are some of the measures that you would say Dozu as a product has taken to bring in that kind of quality of output so that there's little to no hallucination and that there's really deep understanding of the software, the code, and what kind of output is needed for what situation? Tell us a bit about that.
There's with Dosu, that's been one of the things I've liked most. Like I'm biased working for Dosu, but that's one of the things even before I joined, I found incredibly useful was I had the same concerns with hallucinations or incorrect facts or something that's far too verbose, whatever it might be. And so within our human in the loop feedback, you can give, like say like, hey, this is a great response, and then say why, or this is not great at all. And then be able to say, give some reasons that we provide, too slow, outdated, irrelevant, and then have
Okay.
Dosu learn over time. So that's kind of like you get a response, it might not be exactly what you're looking for, or it might be an outdated or not correct source. Dosu didn't understand. You have this option to help Dosu learn more about you and then increase the chances that you're going to have a meaningful result delivered back. So I haven't seen too many of these, at least within the CNCF space, but other projects like Dockling and others will use this at scale for like, I think
Mhm.
Dockling has over like 40,000 plus people in their community. And they're a team of four maintainers. And so they want to save time. They want to not deal with as many logistics like this or answering questions when they're asleep or they're unable to do so. And they employ Dosu for its help within this space. And
Mhm.
on GitHub too, you have this ability to be able to click into that. But what Dosu has is this you'll interact with LLMs, you'll ask questions, but you're always starting from scratch, right? You have to like you said, add docs, add context, like read the LLM into where you want the starting point to be. Dosu is already there because it's been able to ingest all of these data sources. And so by the time I'm asking a question, Dosu has a very good understanding of what might be relevant to answer my question and cite these things like ask CNCF here. You can read more about scope. So it understands here's a website, which it has in its data set. And also here is a document that someone has created and authored here. So Dosu will first take a look at that and then it incorporates memory with that LLM experience to be able to provide a much more rich answer. And then you have the option to help train Dosu and make it better as well. So those are some of the ways in which we deal with hallucinations or incorrect facts. So Dosu can learn over time as you help coach it and say like more relevant, less relevant, and that helps other people's experiences too.
All right, all right. Wow. Okay, really interesting. One of the last questions around Dosu that I want to ask is just how it's being used and just especially in the open source projects that use it, uh, what do they say about it? Uh, you know, what do they like most about it? What do you hear them saying in their own words?
I would say, so I'll pull up our public spaces page. So these are just some of the projects that are using Dosu right now. I just
Mm-hmm.
wrote a case study with the folks from Dockling, and so that's the one that's at least, in it pre-warmed in my cache up here. But these are some of the projects using Dosu. What I've seen the maintainers really focus on is Dosu has a feature to help out with triage of issues and help auto tag issues that are coming in, deduplication. Um, the types of features that give people their time back in their day, that's what Dosu is mostly helping out with. That's what intrigues maintainers is, oh, wow, I don't have to go in and tag all these things and I can make more intelligent and more informed decisions because I'm not spending all this time on getting the taxonomy right of my GitHub issues. That's one of the
Mm,
areas where Dosu helps out, kind of like you could think about all these ways to deal with knowledge within a space. And that's a good starting place, is because that's where work, questions, ingest is coming in. And then by adding Dosu as a bot or sending people to a public space like this, Dosu can handle a lot of the initial questions people might ask, like, how do I install this? Or how do I configure it for my system? Or is this on the roadmap? Or was this worked on? Those kinds of exploratory discovery type questions. And then by the time that people want to call another person, then they're a little bit more read in, and they understand that, like, oh, okay, they don't plan to support Raspberry Pi 3, but they have something running for Raspberry Pi 5. Okay, now I know what to focus on. So those are the types of things that we're seeing from the open source space. What's useful is mostly maintainers, contributors, and then people adopting or using projects, getting more context and just getting a little bit richer set of tools that'll help them out. In the future, what does this look like? Again, a discussion we have at Dosu. Do we create a browser plugin? Do we integrate with IDEs? Do we bring this knowledge a little bit closer to where people are working and
right.
interacting with the things that they're curious about? And
Yeah.
soon we'll have an MCP server as well to be able to provide people that experience for whatever their workflow looks like. Um, Dosu will be there to help enrich knowledge and give them the right answers at the right time.
Awesome. Wow. Sounds like really exciting days for Dosu, and I think there's a huge opportunity ahead of it. And yeah, really exciting that you got to show us what it looks like today. As we wind down the conversation, I've got a couple of rapid fire questions for you. So
I'm ready.
yeah, just shoot from the top of your mind. So, what's uh, probably, I don't know, since I don't know how long back you want to go, but what's your favorite open source, or the one you spent the most time with?
I remember I'll keep this short. It's those that know me know that I remember when it was difficult to, like, when somebody's like, "Okay, I need you to talk for 5 minutes." I'm like, "That seems like forever." And then now it's like it's only 50 minutes. So I'll keep this short. But I think that I started programming in BASIC, like on the calculator, but um, oh man, I grew up during the time of VB6 and when .NET and Microsoft were coming online, and so I came from
Oh,
a living situation where my family didn't have a lot of money, and so to buy an MSDN license as a kid going through high school was not something that was possible for me. So I got really
mhm.
bummed because I wanted to go into game design and all these other things, and nothing was open source. And so this constraint and this life difficulty that got put in my path was something that pushed me down the open source trajectory of my life. So I'm very grateful for that, that it wasn't easy, and that I didn't have the money for MSDN license. So I think the first projects that I really got deep into were probably PHP, and then that led me to Ruby on Rails. That was the one that I really started to take a look at the gems and what this, package manager stuff was all about, how it worked, how things are hashed. That was, I'd say, initially my first favorite project. Then I got into Python and Go and Rust and some other things as days went on. But I think the first, choosing a favorite, I honestly think it would probably be Docker, the thing that kicked it all off for people within the Kubernetes space. I remember I remember some of the maintainers that I would politely probably harass as far as, "Hey, you just released this release. When's it going to be downloadable for my system?" And interacting with them back and forth on GitHub. And then finally getting to Kubernetes and then other open source projects where I realized that, oh my gosh, I can actually interact with people. They'll answer me back, and they might even help coach me, or I can shadow them as far as bringing this change forward and having a discussion. So, to answer your question directly, probably Docker is one of the first things that I really fell in love with and loved the community, loved the open source project, and getting to chat with people.
Awesome. Wow. Ruby, Docker. I want to bring you back to a little more today. Uh, Tell us an open source project that you probably discovered more recently, maybe in the past year or so, that you're really excited about and you'd like to spotlight.
There's one that I I love research, and I love the thrill of being able to gather facts and quantify them. Again, a big surprise that I'm working at a place like Dosu. And so one of the things that I forked and worked on a little bit while I was at CNCF and have continued to tinker with is this project called GPT-Researcher. And it was based off of the Storm paper. So for those curious, and I just loved this solution that this person had created for being able to I can tie in the LLMs, I can tie in my own data and files and things of that nature, and go
Mhm.
run research reports before we had these deep research features across all of these LLM tools. And so now
Mhm.
I'll bounce back and forth. I'll use some of the LLM tools, and I'm not the biggest fan of paying a ton of money for them, but they're
Mhm.
useful. And so
Mhm.
being able to have an open source option like that with this GPT researcher tool is really great. And then I think the person that's the maintainer of that project is writing a book with the Manning publishers. And so you can kind of
Oh,
read about the method that he's using and go into more detail about how to build your own. So that's
mhm.
an interesting project that I've got my eye on that I've been jumping in and out of over the past few months.
Oh, GPT-researcher. All
Mhm.
right. Um, what is one book or resource that influenced your view on tech and open source? Anything at all that comes to your mind? Any one book or person, maybe a talk? I don't know.
There's one by Nadia Engvall. It's this orange book right here, and it's called Working in Public. That one of my favorite books of all time. And the reason I liked it was because she goes into great detail about what the communities look like and quantifies that when you take a look at most open source projects, most of those changes are only done by a very small amount of people. And then a lot of the long tail of contributions are usually people like update the copyright year. I just added in this one feature that I needed. And, they're kind of like just very quick types of contributions and people that don't stick with the project. So I'd always, again, felt that in my gut, but I didn't have any data about it. And I didn't have good methods to think about open source projects with until I read that. And it was just a very eye-opening. Nadia has another book out. I'm blanking on the title of it, but it's about why certain ideas catch on and why they don't. And so I'm about 70% of the way through that one, but she is an incredible author. Just
Mhm.
absolutely incredible.
And the name of this book again?
Working in public.
Working in Public. All right, cool. Great. With that, we come to the end of this conversation. It was quite a pleasure to talk about just all things documentation. And I think I was most fascinated to see that you guys are thinking about some of the really deep concepts around knowledge. And I think that I found most fascinating about, what are facts and where does every document, some of those things that you mentioned at the start and even in the middle about just how documentation and knowledge is evolving. I found those really fascinating. Um, and I think it's a really cool space you're in. I think Dosu really is onto something, and there's a big opportunity here. Yeah, really glad we got to have this conversation. I want to wish you and Dosu the best for all that's coming up. Uh, some of the big updates you mentioned, MCP server, and even the ability to publish from Dosu to documentation that's coming up, and all really soon, like maybe in like the next couple of months. So really exciting times. Yeah, all the best. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for sharing. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
Thanks for having me. It was great to chat, and yeah, you can. I'll make sure to add that to my knowledge base.
Right. Thanks to all of our listeners and viewers for tuning in as well. Go and check out Dosu. They, like Taylor mentioned, they have a very generous free tier and very supportive open source communities. So go and check out what they're up to and play around with it and see what you like about it. Get in touch with Taylor and talk about it. He's a great guy to just chat with about anything open source. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. Do join us again for the next one. See you then.